I recently went to the theater with my family to watch the new Miyazaki Studio Giblets movie, The Boy and the Heron. I was so enthralled by its pure distilled creativity and magic that it inspired me to make a little slice of giblet for my very own. And the slice I decided to make is going to be this diorama. This sketch I drew is not from any specific movie, but it's a scene I could totally imagine coming from that universe. Not only will it have a bookstore downstairs, Miyazaki characters, trees, potted plants, cobblestones, and working lights and junk, but I'm also gonna make where I've always imagined the lo-fi hip-hop girl lives. In fact, I'm pretty sure her origins are from a Miyazaki movie. To start this project, I'm gonna take measurements directly from the drawing to determine what size to cut all of my parts. The main construction is going to be made from 3/16 inch foam board I got from the local gas station.
Give me the foam! Oh. Give me the foam! Get out! Okay.
Once some of the basic shapes are cut, I'm gonna cut out the up and downstairs patterns directly from the drawing. I can then use those patterns to cut out all the details for each wall panel. Oh wow, how magical. Yeah, I got skills. Magic skills. Maybe even nunchuck skills. Okay, stop. Now that we have all of our basic parts cut, we're going to add some trim and details. Starting with some thin balsa that I cut across the grain so it's more flexible. Dipping it in water makes it even more flexible, and after the water dries, the wood will retain the shape it was when wet. Lock by. After gluing on the trim and doubling up the thickness of the wall, I added even more trim and a little windowsill. Lock by. Okay, now we need to put some trim around the window and the door, and I was thinking about it and trying to figure out what's the best way to do that, and I had an idea. So, my idea was to poop some of this clay in this hole so that it then can poop out a shape that I want. You're really going to need to bear down and push in order to squeeze out the clay turtlet. But don't push too hard or you'll get hemorrhoids. Once you've excreted the length you desire, pinch it off and pop it in the oven for 20 minutes at 275 degrees Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit. And using more of the foam-safe super glue, I glue them on. And while we're at it, we're gonna go ahead and slap on a little more paneling and details. Lock by. Now that we have a good bit of the downstairs front wall finished, we're gonna head upstairs to make this wooden door. I started by cutting the balsa sticks at a 45-degree angle so that the outer frame pieces met up nicely like a picture frame. Then proceeded to cut and glue all the little extra pieces to create a grid of squares. Lock via. I also cut and glued the upper trim pieces. Moving to the window. Christian channel. I cut out the design from a sheet of balsa, then continued to successively cut out all the pieces from the single part, so that way they will all go back together perfectly when I glue them up. Lock via. Would you like hardwood floors? No? Well, you're getting them anyways. Just slippy slap down some balsa strips of varying lengths. And we're gonna throw on a dilute brownish paint, which will act similar to stain, allowing the wood grain to show through. Now that we have created not only a huge mess, but all the bits and pieces, it's time to paint. I went with kind of a turquoisey green for all the downstairs trim, and a woodish brown color for the upstairs. Now it's time to whip out your caulk and add some texture to the walls. Using my fingers, I smeared it up and down. I'm going for kind of a stucco-y look. Once the caulk is dry, we're going to hit it with a light creamy yellow. Yeah, okay, now we need to find some glass substitute to put in all these windows and stuff. And I think I have just the thing. A giant chocolate chip cookie. After removing all the stickers and junk, we'll cut out all of our window pleasures and glue them in. It helps to roughen up the edges with sandpapier to give the glue something to stick to. Also, I'd recommend using something like Mod Podge instead of super glue for this step, as it can fog the plastic. I was able to pick some up at the gas station as well.
Mod Podge! Give it to me!
I even made a little stained glass windy using some Sharpies and the magic of friendship. Now we're going to go ahead and finish gluing on all the trim and whatnot to the upstairs wall panels until it looks juicy and delicious. Now, no interior would be complete without some wallpaper. To create some, I first selected a pattern I found online, then I took some of this sticker paper like you would have for labels and printed it out onto it. What's great about the sticker paper method is there's no need to add any glue to anything. You just peel off the back, stick it on, and trim off the overhang. And since Lo-Fi Girl doesn't have any wallpaper in her room, we need to match her paint color, like that, and then paint the walls, like that. Okay, now we're gonna do some of the assembling. And disregard the bookcase sticker I applied to the wall, as I ended up removing it later in favor of actual bookcases. Yes, I made tiny bookcases. I'm sick. Sick, I tell you. Anyways, I'm just gluing all the walls and sections together, being careful that everything is square and straight. I'm also going to use super glue that is foam safe. It's very expensive, but it makes assembly so much faster than regular PVA glue, and I bet you can guess where I got the super glue. Well, you're wrong. I got that at the hobby store. I also picked up some tools to help cope with anxiety and addiction from today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Most of you guys already know that I have struggled with addiction throughout my life, and if I'm being totally honest, it's something that I continue struggling with to this day. But the one thing that has helped me succeed in sobriety more than giving into it has been therapy. I would drink, etc., to self-medicate, but it doesn't medicate anything. It literally just makes things worse. And that is why reaching out to a therapist is so important if you're struggling with any form of addiction, because they can give you the actual tools to help heal and cope from your issues without being stuck in the endless cycle of letting yourself down by hopping on and off the wagon.
Barney! What you doing? Go get him. Go get him, Oni.
And therapy does not only benefit people struggling from substance abuse. I honestly recommend everyone try it out because everyone is dealing with something. Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue or if you're just going through a hard time, BetterHelp can match you with a credentialed therapist in as little as a few days. I personally have used BetterHelp, and I personally recommend you check them out. Not only because it helps support me directly, but because it's online, it's remote, it's incredibly convenient, and they can help you. If that sounds like something you want to check out, then go down to the description, click the link, or you can go to betterhelp.com/BobbyDukeArts and get 10% off your first month. So don't just sit there being drunk and sad. Do something about it. All right, love you. Mwah. Now, normally I would make all of this stuff myself, but I don't want to. So I bought this little kit years ago, and it's just been sitting on my shelf, and it has tiny shelves and furniture and all kinds of stuff. So we're gonna build some of the internal knickknacks and whatnots, and then I can populate it in there and even upstairs. So this will be a huge time saver, and might as well put all this stuff to good use. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, now I gotta figure out how to make a desk lamp, and my idea is to take one of these little dollhouse exterior light that's wired up with an LED, and I'm gonna convert it into a desk lamp. As the strange man just said, we're going to disassemble this light down to just the bell section. Then using some small balsa sticks and dowels, I construct the desk lamp. Oh my goodness, it even has an adorable button base. Once the wires are glued down and everything is finished, we'll slap a coat of paint on it and call it done. Okay. So before we put all of this stuff into the rooms, we need to fill it with all the little goodies we made. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now, the lo-fi girl is going to be sitting at a desk, so obviously she needs a desk chair. And we're going to make that using Sculpey and balsa. First I form the seat, and then the backrest. After baking, I just connect the two using a little bit of balsa, then glue the whole thing onto a wheelbase that I made previously. Paint. And you're done. Now we need to sculpt the lo-fi girl herself. Using some aluminum wire, I bend it around to form an armature. Then with alternately adding Sculpey, baking it, carving it, adding a little more, and baking it again, I slowly build up the form and details. Now that she's done, we're going to paint her as well. Then glue her little butt onto the chair so she can sit at the desk and do her homework. Now let's put together her room so she can get to work. Okay, the wire for the lamp has got to go somewhere, and to keep it hidden, I first poked some holes in the wall so I could fish it up through. That way once it's installed and everything is glued in place, you won't even be able to see it. Wow, that's great. Now let's slippy slap the downstairs front wall onto the downstairs front wall section place. Like that. There's also a little chandelier I made from the kit that I'm installing onto the bottom of the upstairs floor, which will end up being the ceiling of the downstairs. I only shop at Albertsons. We got the downstairs done. Upstairs done. I didn't think that put out enough light, the little chandelier doohickey, so I added some more lights. They're wired up. That wire has to go up through that hole, through the hole and up to the top. Then we can glue that on top of the bottom, and it will then be one. Okay, time to build us a tiny deck. I started by pre-painting some square balsa sticks and some miniature dollhouse trim. Then after cutting the squares to length, I also cut down and beveled the end of a thinner stick, gluing it to the square one, creating a decorative joist. After much measuring, I cut a bunch of short links from the dollhouse trim and glued them to the joists one after another. Like that. Glued that puppy onto the front and another section onto the side, then joined it all together with another balsa strip. Adding a few more joists to finish the base structure. Now, so she has something to stand on without falling through, we need to add the actual decking boards. Like that. And so she doesn't fall off the edge, we need to make a handrail by cutting a buttload of thin balsa sticks, which I then glued onto some longer strips. Cutting it to length and gluing them on. I bet this whole time you thought I was gonna make a deck joke. Well, you're wrong. I wouldn't stoop so low. But I have heard that if you have a small deck, it's a good idea to trim the bushes around to make it look bigger. Moving to the exterior lighting. Here I'm using the same method to hide the wires as I did with the desk lamp. Poking a hole through the front and the top, that way I can fish the wires up inside the wall, keeping them hidden. Like that. No bookstore would be complete without a sign out front. To make it, I printed off a water slide decal and applied it to a little block of wood I prepared earlier. Then adding some trim not only will help to frame the little sign, but will also give it more surface area to glue to. I added another light down here, and you might be wondering to yourself, Bobby, where are the wires? Well, I stabbed a hole so that a channel led from behind there to out here. And then if you look really close, you can actually see the wire poking through into this little pipe that I made. So these are just coffee straws. And then I made these little elbows out of polymer clay. And that is to conceal the wire. And it goes up. And then here are actually the wires that control this right here. So let us continuing. Oh, look. You can kind of see me. Hello. Now, to make the upstairs ceiling and roof. I wanted to add a section to the ceiling that would allow for light to shine through the little stained glass window. So after removing a wedge shape, I glued on a curved piece of poster board, allowing the light to get to it. And speaking of lights, let's install some. I first cut out some holes and then pooped in these little domes I made from the ends of insect pinning needle containers. Glued in some 3-volt LED clusters, then soldered everything together. Well, like that. Yep. Fished all the other wires up through the top and glued it on. You probably didn't notice this, but I totally forgot to make and add the cat that's sitting on the windowsill in the room with the lo-fi girl. Well, apparently I didn't either. Oh well. You'll just have to come back for part 2, where I have to figure out how to get the cat in her room without destroying it. Should be fun. Anyways, to make the roof, I started by gluing up some sheets of styrofoam. And after fitting it to the ceiling and using my laser blade to bevel the edges, I glue on the first level. If you recall, the roof has a 2-tiered design, and to make that upper domey bit, I cut it to size. Then using a rasp, I shaped it into a domey shape. Then glued it on. If you're wondering what that notched out area is, it's going to be where I can slide in the battery packs to keep them somewhat hidden. Then we'll slippy slap a terracotta colored base coat on everything, that way after the shingles are applied you won't be able to see any white through the gapes. I have no memory as to what I'm doing here or why I recorded it. Anyways, let's make some shingles. After cutting a buttload of balsa strips, I paint them the same terracotta color. Then I decided to try an experiment by bending the strips. That way after they dry and I cut the shingles, they'll retain a small amount of curve which will help them match up to the curved dome section of the roof. Which I then promptly discarded because I realized the strips were too wide and thick. After remaking some smaller strips, I proceeded to cut them to length using this very inefficient jig.
Taco Bell, doing it and doing it and doing it well, doing it and doing it and doing it well, doing it and doing it and doing it well. I represent Taco Bell Dorito Shop. Worst rapper that ever. Worst rapper to ever get on so many lights. Worst rapper to ever blow up an overnight. And with my D-swell, my D12 friends were over twice.
Now that the shingles have been applied, we need to make some ridge caps. I made those by baking a right angle section of polymer clay, which I then cut individual rib cap shingles and glued them stacked one on top of the other till it looks like that. Then painted.
Onto the battery packs!
I just soldered them onto the ends of the wires, making sure to test as I went. Then once they were done and pushed into their slots, I painted them brown color so that they'd blend in better with the trim. Like that. You know what, why don't I stop talking and you just watch me finish adding the final details.
Hey guys.
Part 1, where I build the house, is finished. Wow, that looks great. So guys, like I mentioned earlier, this is only part 1 of the Studio Ghibli Miyazaki-inspired diorama, so do subscribe so you can watch part 2 when it comes out. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to the guys at the gas station and the hobby store for being so awesome. If you're ever in the Fort Worth area, be sure to check out the Gateway Shell gas station off Highway 377 or JT's Hobby off Bryan Irvin, and tell them Bobby sent you.